Now, this is something I used to use in face-to-face lessons, but this could be done remote if you're doing a lesson using a platform where you can see your class. And you could say to them, well, here's a problem. You could give them this problem and say, right, you don't have to do it. Now, when I used to say that, the kids thought I had two heads. A maths teacher saying you don't have to do it. But what I'm saying is, don't jump in. No hands up, because often the bright kid will know how to do it and will just give the thinking for the others. I used to get them kind of discuss in their groups or pairs or tables and say, when you decide what the first step is, put your hands up and tell me. So then it was under my control who I was going to ask. And it would be something as simple as draw a diagram. Again, it's a bit cheesy. I used to say, if it's tricky, draw a picky. And that kind of gets them going. It doesn't have to be a diagram, but often it is. And then, right, now draw it. Don't carry on with the question. Just draw the diagram, and then we'll come back and look at it and assess it and think what the next step's going to be, and then we'll agree. And so by doing this kind of collaboratively working on it and putting their, writing, deciding what the next step was and having a challenge. You're going to do that as your next step? Or how about that? You said you were going to do this. Which one do you think's better? They eventually start doing the question. Because what you're doing is you're putting the steps in, but we're doing it together rather than telling them. So this I used to find very useful. The Olympic papers, as I spoke about. Now, there's two ways you could use these. The first way is just if you've taught a topic, generating a plenary or a starter at the next lesson by choosing an appropriate question for the topic you've been teaching. There are now versions of most of the past exam papers done as gold, silver and bronze. So the gold is the question as it appeared. Now, if you're doing an exam, what I've said the exam papers are, now obviously at the moment we haven't had the exams, but the mocks. So supposing the next time you do a mock, you choose a previous paper. That paper will have the gold, silver, bronze version in the Emporium cabinet, and I've collected them all together already in the Olympic paper folder. So you'll find June, I don't know, November papers are in there as gold, silver, bronze. It's only the AO3 question, so you won't find the gold, silver, bronze version of an AO1 question, because there's only one way to answer it. It's just straightforward. But if it's something like this, where there's different, this is a problem-solving question, what you'll find is you've got the gold is exactly the same as it appeared in the exam. So the silver, so if you've either taught this topic and you want to do a plenary, I'm going to start you off on gold. Now again, starting them off on gold is high expectations. Some students will find that difficult. Certainly this was on both tiers, and the success rate was extremely low at foundation level for this question. You can imagine why. So you could either, and this is how I used it when it was exams, I didn't start them all off on gold. I marked their exam, gave it back, let's do your corrections, and do the rag sheet or whatever. And if you got your target grade or higher, I'm going to give you the gold version to do your corrections, because really I want you to be value added. It's excellent. If you're one grade below your target grade, I'm going to give you the silver version, which has got some scaffolding put in to help you do your corrections. And if you were 2 or more grades below your target grade, I'm going to give you the bronze version, which has got a lot of scaffolding so you can do your corrections. However, in the real exam, it's going to appear like this. So you need to learn from those corrections. Now, that's when I was doing it as a correction of a mock. In other words, their correction, their support for their corrections, because if I'd have just said correct the one you see in front of you as it appeared the gold, a lot of them aren't going to be able to do it if they couldn't do it in the exam. They might, but a lot of them will either copy a friend who got it right, or I'll end up doing it on the board, and copying isn't learning. So I want them to have a go and at least pick up some of those progress marks if a question was going to come up like that in the future. If you use the shadow papers, you could still use these because they're not based on the shadow papers, because it's still essentially the same question, just with different numbers or different contexts, or a different shape in this case perhaps. If you were using this as a plenary and you taught that topic, I used to start them off on gold, but then I printed off silvers and bronzes and left them at the back of the room so that if they got stuck, they could get up and pick up the next colour to support them. So they're all doing the same question, but the level of support is different. So someone's just asked, there are gold, silver, and bronze exam papers, not the paper as a whole. They're only the AO3 questions, so they're one single paper rather than paper 1, paper 2, paper 3, but it covers the AO3 questions within that series of exams. So you really either give them out when you've given them all 3 papers back, or you could keep giving them, could circle the ones that belong to paper 1. But so there's 2 ways you could use those gold, silver, and bronze. But what it's doing is it's making a problem-solving question that's very demanding more accessible to the students through something that's been done by Pearson, and I think that's really powerful.